Number 1.
Lyle Menendez and Erik Menendez, the brothers who would become synonymous with the most sensational parricide trial in American history, were born into a life of immense privilege and seething dysfunction, Lyle on January 10, 1968, and Erik on November 27, 1970, in New York City, the sons of Jose Menendez, a Cuban-American immigrant who rose from poverty to become a powerful entertainment executive, and Kitty Menendez, a former beauty queen and schoolteacher who gave up her career to raise their children in the opulent enclaves of Calabasas in Beverly Hills, California, a world of tennis courts, swimming pools, and private schools that masked a deeply troubled family dynamic. The perpetrators, Lyle and Erik, were seen by the outside world as successful and well-adjusted. Lyle attended Princeton University, though he was suspended for plagiarism, and Erik was a talented tennis player ranked highly in the country, yet behind the closed doors of their multi-million-dollar mansions, the brothers claimed to have suffered years of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father, a domineering and volatile man who demanded perfection, and their mother, who they alleged was complicit in the abuse and struggled with mental health issues and substance abuse. The victims of the crime were Jose and Mary Louise Kitty Menendez, a couple whose murder would captivate the nation and expose the dark underbelly of the American dream. Jose was 45 years old, the chairman and CEO of Live Entertainment, a man known for his ruthless business tactics and his ability to make and break careers in Hollywood, described by colleagues as brilliant but intimidating, while Kitty was 47, a homemaker who had devoted her life to her family but was described by friends as increasingly fragile and isolated, deeply invested in maintaining the family's image of success. The setting for the crime was the Menendez family home at 3316 Elm Drive in Beverly Hills, a sprawling 9,000-square-foot Mediterranean-style mansion located in the prestigious Beverly Hills Flats neighborhood, a street lined with manicured lawns and mansions, a symbol of the wealth and status that the Menendez family had achieved, and the site of the brutal execution of the parents who provided it all. The timeline of events leading to the crime began on the evening of August 20, 1989, a warm summer night. The brothers, then 21 and 18, entered the den of the family home armed with two 12-gauge shotguns, Mossberg 500s purchased illegally in San Diego a few days prior under false identification, while their parents were relaxing and watching a movie, completely unaware of the fate that awaited them. The crime itself was a brutal execution. Lyle and Erik fired a total of 16 rounds into their parents. Jose was shot point-blank in the back of the head and also sustained shotgun wounds to the torso and arms, while Kitty was shot multiple times in the torso, legs, arms, and chest, with the final shot being a contact wound to her face, leaving the bodies unrecognizable in a scene that the first responders described as one of the most gruesome they had ever seen. The discovery and initial investigation began late that night when the brothers called 911, sobbing and screaming that someone had killed their parents. The police arrived to find a house of horrors and the brothers outside, hysterical, a performance that initially convinced authorities they were grieving victims, and the initial police report described the event as a mob hit due to Jose's business dealings. The investigation, however, soon hit a dead end, as the brothers were not initially considered suspects, and for months the case went cold, while Lyle and Erik embarked on a spree of spending, buying luxury cars, expensive watches, and traveling the world with their inheritance, which was estimated at $14 million. The forensic investigation initially struggled due to the chaotic crime scene, but autopsies confirmed the close-range shotgun wounds, and while no fingerprints were found on the shells due to the use of gloves, the lack of forced entry and the possession of the shotguns by the brothers were overlooked in the early stages. The breakthrough in the investigation came not from physical evidence but from human psychology and betrayal. Dr. Jerome Oziel, a psychologist whom Erik Menendez had begun seeing after the murders, recorded their sessions without consent, and in these recordings, Erik confessed to the murders, discussing the planning and the execution in chilling detail, admitting that the motive was hatred and a desire for the inheritance, but also detailing the alleged abuse. The tapes were eventually discovered by Oziel's former lover, Juvenile Smith, who tipped off the police, leading to the arrest. The arrest occurred on March 8, 1990, when the brothers were taken into custody, Lyle in Beverly Hills and Erik in Israel where he was playing a tennis tournament, and were extradited to Los Angeles to face charges. The legal proceedings were a media phenomenon, with the trials commencing in 1993 and presided over by Judge Stanley Weisberg, held in the Los Angeles County Superior Court. The prosecution, led by Deputy District Attorneys Pam Bozanik and David Kahn, argued that the brothers killed their parents out of greed and hatred, a cold, calculated execution for money, pointing to their extravagant spending after the murders. The defense, led by Leslie Abramson and Jill Lansing for Erik and Lyle respectively, presented a narrative of imperfect self-defense, arguing that the brothers feared for their lives after a lifetime of physical and sexual abuse, and that their parents were about to kill them to cover up the scandal, and they called family members to testify to the abuse, including the brothers' aunt, Marta Cano, and uncle, Brian Anderson. The first trial ended in mistrials, with two separate juries deadlocked, but a retrial in 1995, which excluded much of the abuse evidence due to a Supreme Court ruling on the admissibility of the tapes, resulted in a dramatically different outcome. On March 20, 1996, after deliberations, the juries found Lyle and Erik Menendez guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, rejecting the abuse defense as a mitigating factor. The sentencing hearing took place on July 2, 1996, where Judge Weisberg sentenced both brothers to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, to be served in a California state prison. Following their conviction, Lyle and Erik were sent to separate prisons but were eventually reunited at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, where they married while incarcerated and have become advocates for prison reform and victims of abuse, and as of recent reports, they are seeking a new trial based on new evidence of the alleged abuse. The lasting impact of the Menendez case is profound, as it brought the issue of family violence and sexual abuse into the national conversation, challenged the perception of wealth as a buffer against domestic turmoil, and resulted in the passage of laws allowing hearsay evidence in abuse cases. It also marked the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle, as the trial was one of the first to be televised in its entirety, setting a precedent for the media's role in high-profile criminal trials and cementing the Menendez brothers' place in the annals of true crime history. Number 2. Kip Philip Kinkel, known as Kip Kinkel, was born on August 30, 1982, in Springfield, Oregon, a town in the Pacific Northwest that would become the site of one of the most shocking school shootings in the pre-Columbine era, a tragedy that began with the murder of his parents and ended with a rampage at his high school, committed by a 15-year-old boy who had exhibited signs of severe mental illness for years. Kip was born to William Kinkel, a popular Spanish teacher at Thurston High School, and Faith Kinkel, a dedicated schoolteacher, both respected members of the community who were deeply invested in their son's education and well-being, but who struggled to manage his escalating behavioral problems, which included violence, fascination with explosives, and a history of threats. The victims of Kip Kinkel were his parents, William, 59, and Faith, 57, two educators who had devoted their lives to the Springfield community and who were beloved by their students and colleagues. They were described as patient and kind, and their deaths shocked the community to its core, compounded by the fact that they were killed by their own son, and later, the students at Thurston High School, including 25 injured students, making it one of the deadliest school attacks in U.S. history at that time. The setting for the crime was the Kinkel family home at 940 66th Street in Springfield, and Thurston High School, a large public school where Kip was a freshman, and where he would unleash his rage on the morning of May 21, 1998. The timeline of events leading to the crime began on May 20, 1998, when Kip was arrested for possession of a stolen firearm, a .32 caliber pistol he had bought from a friend, and his father picked him up from the police station, expressing disappointment and a desire to get him help. The next morning, Kip, fearing that he would never be accepted into society, retrieved a .22 caliber rifle from his room, and at approximately 6 a.m., he entered his parents' bedroom and shot his father in the back of the head while he was sleeping, then went downstairs and waited for his mother to return home from work, shooting her multiple times in the head and torso with a .22 rifle and a 9mm pistol, dragging her body to the basement. The crime itself was a prelude to a larger attack. After killing his parents, Kip loaded the family car with 3 guns, ammunition, and a knife, and drove to Thurston High School. Arriving just before 8 a.m., and wearing a trench coat to hide his weapons, he entered the school cafeteria and opened fire with a .22 caliber rifle, firing 51 rounds and killing 2 students, Ben Walker and Michael Nicolausen, and wounding 25 others, before being tackled by several students in the cafeteria. The discovery and initial investigation began immediately after the shooting, with police swarming the school and arresting Kinkel, who was found with a knife and a .22 rifle, and when asked why he did it, he told officers he had no choice, that "I had to kill my parents." A search of the Kinkel home revealed the bodies of his parents, as well as a large arsenal of weapons, including explosives, pipe bombs, and ammunition stored in the basement, and Kip's room was filled with violent drawings and notes about killing. The forensic investigation involved a thorough analysis of the crime scene, the recovery of the weapons, and the examination of Kinkel's mental state, with psychiatrists later diagnosing him with paranoid schizophrenia and finding that he had been suffering from auditory hallucinations, telling him to kill his parents and others. The legal proceedings began with Kip being charged as an adult with 4 counts of aggravated murder and 26 counts of attempted murder, and facing the death penalty. However, his defense team, led by attorney Charles Lee, argued that he was legally insane at the time of the crimes, a defense that was ultimately rejected. On November 9, 1999, Kip Kinkel pleaded guilty to all charges in a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty, and was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence that was upheld by the Oregon Supreme Court in 2002. Following his conviction, Kinkel was transferred to the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem, where he remains as of the most recent reports, and his case has had a lasting impact on the discussion of mental illness and juvenile justice, as he was a minor who committed crimes of extreme violence, sparking debates about the treatment of juvenile offenders and the need for early intervention in cases of severe mental illness. Number 3. Tyler Hadley, a 17-year-old from Port St. Lucie, Florida, was born on May 20, 1994, into a stable, middle-class family, the son of Blake Hadley, a successful engineer, and Mary Jo Hadley, a dedicated elementary school teacher, a family that was active in their church and described by neighbors as kind, helpful, and normal, a facade that masked a teenager's deep descent into drug abuse, depression, and ultimately, a cold-blooded matricide and patricide that shocked the nation for its callousness. Tyler Hadley was a quiet student at Port St. Lucie High School who struggled academically and socially, and had a history of drug use, specifically ecstasy and marijuana, and had been arrested for a minor offense related to a vehicle accident, a fact that his parents, particularly his father, were about, creating tension in the household. The victims of Tyler Hadley were his parents, Blake Hadley, 54, and Mary Jo Hadley, 47, 2 individuals who had devoted their lives to their family and their community. Blake was described as a loving father who enjoyed golf and was a talented engineer, while Mary Jo was a beloved teacher who taught special education at a local elementary school and was known for her patience and compassion. And their deaths were a devastating blow to the Port St. Lucie community. The setting for the crime was the Hadley family home at 3717 Northeast Granger Avenue, a quiet suburban street in Port St. Lucie, a city known for its safety and family-friendly atmosphere, a place where such a horrific crime seemed unimaginable. The timeline of events leading to the crime began on July 15, 2011, when Tyler, angry that his parents had confiscated his cell phone and were forbidding him from going out due to his drug use and a car accident he had caused, decided to kill them. He spent the day planning the murders, searching the internet for information on how to kill someone with a hammer and how to dispose of a body, and purchasing a hammer and a bottle of rum. The crime itself occurred on the evening of July 16, 2011, at approximately 5 p.m., while his mother was in the kitchen and his father was in the living room. Tyler approached his mother from behind and bludgeoned her with the hammer, striking her multiple times in the head and face, killing her, then went to the living room and attacked his father, striking him multiple times with the hammer, killing him as well, leaving their bodies in a bloody heap in the living room, and then dragging them into a bedroom and piling books and other items on top of them. The discovery and initial investigation was delayed because Tyler Hadley, in a move that shocked the world, decided to throw a party at his house that same night. He posted an invitation on Facebook, and by 9 p.m., dozens of teenagers had arrived, drinking and partying just feet away from the bloody bodies of his parents, and at one point during the party, Tyler allegedly showed a friend the bodies, saying, "I killed my parents." The friend initially dismissed it as a joke, but later, when the party ended, the friend called a tip line and reported the crime, leading to a police welfare check the next morning. On July 17, 2011, police arrived at the home and found the bodies, and Tyler Hadley was arrested at the scene, and when asked why he did it, he told police that he was just frustrated and wanted to be free. The forensic investigation involved the recovery of the hammer, which was found in Tyler's bedroom, and the analysis of the blood spatter patterns, which confirmed that the murders had been committed with a hammer, and a toxicology report revealed that Tyler had been under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time. The legal proceedings began in 2012, with Hadley being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in 2014, and the prosecution, led by State Attorney Bruce Colton, argued that Hadley killed his parents because they were interfering with his lifestyle and that he wanted to inherit their money, while the defense argued that he was mentally ill and insane at the time. but the jury rejected the insanity defense. On October 17, 2014, Tyler Hadley was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the sentencing hearing took place on October 23, 2014, where the judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, a sentence that was upheld on appeal in 2016. Following his conviction, Hadley was transferred to the Florida Department of Corrections, and as of the most recent reports, he is serving his sentence at the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution, and his case has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of teenage entitlement, drug abuse, and the failure of mental health intervention, as well as a symbol of the dark side of social media, which Hadley used to facilitate his party while his parents' bodies lay in the next room. Number 4. Robert Bever, the 18-year-old eldest son of the Bever family, was born in 1996 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, a suburb of Tulsa known for its safety and strong community values, and he, along with his 16-year-old brother Michael, would become the perpetrators of one of the most horrific familicides in Oklahoma history, a massacre that wiped out most of his family in a matter of minutes. The Bever family was a large, homeschooled family with 7 children, and were known in their neighborhood as quiet, private, and devoutly religious, but behind the walls of their home at 709 Magnolia Court, there was a simmering darkness, and the brothers, particularly Robert, had developed a fascination with mass murder, serial killers, and a deep-seated desire to commit a rampage that would make them famous. The victims of the Bever brothers were their parents, David Bever, 52, a systems analyst at a local company, and April Bever, 44, a homemaker who homeschooled the children, as well as their siblings, Daniel Bever, 12, Christopher Bever, 7, and Victoria Bever, 5, who were all killed in the attack. 2 other siblings, a 2-year-old sister who was asleep in another room and a 13-year-old sister who was critically injured but survived by playing dead, were the only survivors. The setting for the crime was the Bever family home, a 2-story house in a quiet cul-de-sac, a neighborhood that had never seen a violent crime of this magnitude. The timeline of events leading to the crime began in the months prior, when Robert and Michael began planning a mass murder, researching tactics, and acquiring weapons, including knives and body armor, and their stated goal was to kill their family and then go on a rampage in the town of Broken Arrow, eventually ending their own lives in a shootout with police. The crime itself occurred on the evening of July 22, 2015. The brothers, armed with knives, began their attack inside the house, systematically hunting down their family members. Their father, David, was attacked first and was stabbed multiple times in the torso and neck, and their mother, April, was also stabbed repeatedly. The brothers then attacked their younger siblings, chasing them through the house, and the scene was described by police as a house of horrors, with blood on the walls and bodies in every room. The discovery and initial investigation began when a frantic 911 call was placed from the home at approximately 11:30 p.m., and when police arrived, they found the 13-year-old girl outside the house, bleeding and screaming that her brothers were killing everyone, and as officers entered the home, they found a bloodbath, and the 2 brothers attempted to flee but were quickly apprehended. The forensic investigation involved the analysis of the crime scene, which showed the brutality of the attacks, with defensive wounds on the victims indicating they had tried to fight back, and the recovery of the weapons, including 2 large knives, and the discovery of a detailed plan for the massacre, including lists of supplies and body armor, in the brothers' room. The legal proceedings began with the brothers being charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Michael Bever, who was 16 at the time, was charged as an adult, and both brothers faced life in prison without parole, but due to his age, Michael could not face the death penalty. On April 28, 2016, Robert Bever pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michael Bever's trial began in 2018, and he was also found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 38 years, but the judge later amended his sentence to life without parole due to the heinous nature of the crimes. Following their convictions, Robert and Michael Bever were transferred to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, and as of the most recent reports, they are serving their sentences in separate facilities. The lasting impact of the Bever case is profound, as it exposed the hidden dangers of insular, homeschooled families, and the difficulty in detecting warning signs of severe mental illness and homicidal ideation in isolated environments, and it remains one of the most shocking cases of familicide in American history. Number 5. Carly Madison Gregg, a 15-year-old sophomore at Rankin County School District in Mississippi, was born in 2008 or 2009, and was known as a typical teenager with a bright future ahead of her, until March 18, 2024, when she committed a crime that would shock the small community of Brandon, Mississippi, and make her one of the youngest females in the U.S. to be sentenced to life in prison. Carly lived with her mother, Ashley Smiley, a well-respected math teacher at Northwest Rankin Middle School, and her stepfather, Heath Smiley, in a suburban home, and by all accounts, the family was stable and supportive, with Ashley described as a dedicated educator who loved her daughter and her students. The victim of Carly Gregg was her mother, Ashley Smiley, 36, a woman who had devoted her life to education and was beloved by her students, described as a kind, patient, and caring teacher who was always willing to help others, and whose death was a devastating loss to the school and the community. The setting for the crime was the family home on Avalon Drive in Brandon, a quiet, friendly neighborhood, and the Rankin County School District, where the ripple effects of the crime would be felt for years. The timeline of events leading to the crime began in the afternoon of March 18, 2024. Carly had been caught vaping by school officials earlier that day, and her mother was informed, leading to an argument when they returned home. At approximately 4 p.m., Carly retrieved her stepfather's .357 Magnum revolver from a lockbox in the bedroom, and as her mother sat on the couch, Carly shot her multiple times, with one bullet striking her in the face, killing her instantly. The discovery and initial investigation began when Heath Smiley, Carly's stepfather, returned home from work around 5 p.m. As he entered the house, he saw Carly pointing a gun at him, and she fired a shot, grazing his shoulder, but he was able to wrestle the gun away from her and call 911. When police arrived, they found Ashley Smiley dead on the couch and Carly in the kitchen, and she was immediately taken into custody. The forensic investigation involved the recovery of the revolver, and Carly's initial statement to police, where she claimed she didn't remember what happened, but the evidence, including text messages and internet searches about how to get away with murder and how to fake a death, painted a different picture, showing a premeditated act. The legal proceedings began in August 2024, with Carly Gregg being charged as an adult with 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, and facing a possible sentence of life in prison without parole. The trial began on September 16, 2024, in the Rankin County Circuit Court, and the prosecution argued that the shooting was premeditated, pointing to the internet searches and the fact that she had invited a friend over to see the body after the shooting, while the defense argued that she was mentally ill and had a psychotic break. On September 20, 2024, after a short deliberation, the jury found Carly Gregg guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder, and on September 24, 2024, Judge Mark Millam sentenced her to 2 consecutive life sentences in the custody of the Mississippi Department of Corrections, making her one of the youngest females in U.S. history to be sentenced to life in prison. Following her conviction, she was transferred to the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility, and as of the most recent reports, she is serving her sentence, and the case has sparked a debate about juvenile justice and the treatment of minors in the adult criminal justice system, with the victim, Ashley Smiley, remembered as a devoted mother and teacher whose life was tragically cut short by her own daughter. Thank you for watching to the end of this documentary. If you found this in-depth examination of teenagers who committed the ultimate act of violence against their own parents informative, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. A like on this video helps tremendously with the algorithm and allows this content to reach more viewers. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Which of these cases had the greatest impact on you, and what are your thoughts on how society should handle juvenile offenders who commit such heinous crimes? I am also genuinely curious to know where in the world you are watching from right now, as this channel reaches a global audience and it is always fascinating to see the diverse locations of our community. Thank you again for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.